French citizens are choosing their next president this month. And we're not going to lie to you. They're probably going to give President Emmanuel Macron another 5-year term. Polls suggest he'll come out ahead of his closest rival, Marine Le Pen. She's rebranded her family's right-wing nationalist party to appeal to voters who don't want to think of themselves as, well, right-wing nationalists. Then again, we're living in bonkers times, with wars and pandemics that have transformed our lives and smashed our political crystal balls. So we've got 3 wildcards that could upend the French election. But first, some basic mechanics. It takes 2 rounds of voting to determine the winner. First, there's the 12-candidate free-for-all on the 10th of April, followed by a face-off between the top 2 candidates in the second round on April 24th. The other big thing to know? The traditional center-right and center-left political parties have tanked in France. They are fielding candidates, but polls suggest that it's the far right and the far left who are threatening to crash Macron's centrist tent. Which brings us to the first big wildcard, the political extremes. Let's look at the drama on the far right. In recent months, it was Éric Zemmour who seemed to be outranking Le Pen as France's top culture warrior. The pundit-turned-politician blames sagging masculinity for the West's woes and subscribes to a racist anti-immigrant conspiracy theory. For a while, it looked like he would split the nationalist vote, threatening Le Pen. But his status as a Putin fanboy seems to be hurting his bid amid the Ukraine invasion, and Zemmour is fading in the polls. That's good news for Le Pen, who is picking up some of his voters, and bad news for Macron. Okay, so now let's turn to the far left. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, in his 3rd bid for the Élysée, is also making gains. He's campaigning on a fuel price freeze, early retirement, and amnesty for the Gilets jaunes protesters who paralyzed Paris several years back. While Mélenchon is within striking distance of Le Pen in the first round, he's unlikely at this rate to make it to the second round. Even if he misses out, Macron may have to face up to Mélenchon's angry fans, and Macron definitely cannot count on their support. One poll suggests that almost half of Mélenchon voters would abstain from voting at all in the second round, and the rest would be about evenly divided between Macron and Le Pen. A consolidated right and a hostile left could spell big problems for the incumbent president. And that brings us to our second wild card, abstentions. The French are usually pretty diligent voters, turning out at rates of around 80% in recent elections. But this year, pollsters expect as much as 1/3 of voters to stay home. The perception of Macron as the inevitable winner and his low-key campaign have dampened attention to the race. And let's not forget, both rounds coincide with school holidays in various parts of the country, meaning many voters might be out of town. Low turnout elections tend to favor the incumbent. But the risk for Macron is that voters who back him, but are kind of meh about it, could skip the vote. The last wildcard may be the biggest one, Ukraine. Putin's invasion has been, politically speaking, a mixed blessing for Macron. On the plus side, it sparked a rally around the flag effect that boosted the wartime leader, pushing him upwards of 30% in the polls. It also hurt Le Pen and Zemmour, who've expressed admiration for Putin in the past. That's where we get into the mixed part of this blessing for Macron. Ukraine is hurting Zemmour more than Le Pen, driving that right-wing consolidation we talked about. Meanwhile, that rally around the flag polling boost for Macron is starting to, well, flag. Macron capitalized on his status as a wartime leader. The implicit question, who would you rather take that 3 a.m. call from Putin? Me or my opponents? But it's pocketbook issues, like the rising cost of living, that are by far the top concern for voters across the political spectrum. As the war in Ukraine drags on, prices for food, and especially fuel, look set to go up even higher. The crisis has kept Macron off the campaign trail. At the start of the war, that benefited the president, giving the image of a statesman above the political fray. But as the vote draws closer, he risks looking aloof from voters' concerns.